So we were in the Jackson House.
Yeah.
Best burger in the city?
By far. I lived in the city for 10 years. I heard about it before I came in. I only live about 4 blocks away, Pat, and there's some good burgers out there. But I think the locals know. My old college roommate, by the way, is here.
Yeah.
Greg Staub's here, and every time I come into the Jackson House, I see him here, and he doesn't even live downtown. So he knows about it. Everyone knows about it. They're clearly the best burgers in the city. You have a tight window to come in and eat. I think they're only open for a couple hours a day, but the wait's going to be worth it.
We're in a little bit of a tight corner, but we're gonna make the most of it.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about with the game. Obviously, we got to get to Temple, but I don't really think I could have rewritten the headline more times last time. It was like, fire Franklin. This team has heart. McSorley's leading the back. Wait, they lost the game.
Yeah. Done in by a slow start. The defense wasn't ready to go at the beginning of the game. They clearly had trouble trying to stop Pitt's power game with James Conner, and also the misdirection on the jet sweeps.
Yep.
They had some defensive players get hurt early. Jason Gabinda didn't play in the middle. But I had a feeling that Joe Moorhead would adjust and get the offense going. That's kind of why they brought him in. The guy just, in-game adjustments, I'm told, is what he's best at. When they came out in the second half, I figured if they could get a couple stops, it might get interesting. I didn't think it would get that interesting, but just a fascinating fourth quarter. I mean, I think, given the opponent, that probably would have been, had they pulled it off, maybe the greatest comeback in Penn State history. I mean, that was just that would have been up there with the Illinois comeback in '94. That probably Illinois was a little bit better.
It's such a swing. It's so crazy the way a story can change if one or two things go differently. They lose that game 35-10.
Yeah.
You're legitimately thinking, okay, we have our proof. Maybe James Franklin isn't the guy.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, they figured out the offense, they've got the quarterback, they've got the athletes, the program's moving in the right direction. I don't know if I'm overreacting to points, because it's been so long since we've seen a good offensive game.
Right.
But my end takeaway was positive.
Yes. Now, there's still a couple things that need to get cleaned up, and I think we talked about it, Pat, last week. I mean, for Penn State to win some games this year, they're going to have to be shootouts.
Yeah.
The strength of the team is going to be their offense. The defense is just going to kind of have to, they're going to give up some points, they're going to give up some yards, they have to make a couple of plays or get some turnovers, but they're going to lead with their offense this year, and this is the first year in the Franklin reign. This is year 3 that's been the case. But that's just the way of the world in college football. They've finally caught up.
I think points are, like you said, the way of the future, and points are something that helps you get relevant.
Yeah.
They say defense wins championships, but for programs that aren't, say, in Alabama and LSU that aren't getting the 5 stars, points have made Oregon a top-tier program. Points have made TCU more relevant than the University of Texas.
Right.
Baylor's probably not a good example given what they're going through right now, but at the same time, those 3 programs are at the top. They're ahead of Penn State, and it's because they're winning with offense.
Yeah, and let's not forget about Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State, the athletes that Urban has collected, and this is a young Ohio State team. They can score, as Penn State knows. They gave up 38 to them last year, 63 to them the year before that. So if you're going to seriously try and contend with Ohio State, if you can't score into the high 30s, you have no shot.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very good sign. I think you will see Penn State continue to score. It's very important, though, that they keep Saquon Barkley healthy, because as you see, when he comes out of the game, it's just not the same. I mean, he does things that no other running back can do, and he consistently makes something out of nothing, because there were some times where I thought he was going to lose yards the first 2 weeks. And he's just made some spectacular plays. 5 touchdowns in a game. He made it look pretty easy, too.
On the defensive side, I know it looked bad.
Yeah.
The injuries are bad. Not having Jason Gabinda is a huge loss.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you give up 341 yards on paper. That looks bad, but they were running a run-heavy, almost like Army last year when they gave up around 250 yards. So in a sense, I almost look at it as, well, that's all they were doing. Misdirection. It was almost like they were running a high school or an option offense.
Right. Well, the question is, though, Pat, if you have the offensive line and the running backs, why wouldn't you do that against Penn State? I mean, they're not really ready to go yet up front. They're young. The line, you got Naeem Wortman-White, who's not all the way back, didn't play. I mean, I wondered about this, a power running game. They really didn't practice against it in the offseason. They were working against Moorhead's up-tempo spread. You saw Pitt come out in 2 and 3 tight end sets. They flipped the formation a couple of times. Penn State struggled to adjust. And there were other times, Pat, where it just looked like Penn State wasn't quick enough to close on the ball. I think they had to honor the jet sweep fake, and they were a step slow. And I think, you look at who they're going to play on the schedule. Minnesota is a team that can run the ball. Iowa is a team that can line up and run the ball. Ohio State, absolutely, and Michigan. So the question becomes, is this Penn State defense good enough to stop a team that just says, hey, we're going to run the ball down your throat?
What do you think the game said about the state of the two programs? Earlier you brought up Urban Meyer. My takeaway was it looks like Penn State's kind of building a Ohio State light, where you have an up-tempo offense, 4-star athletes rather than maybe 5-star Ohio State. And then on the Pitt side, you've got a power offense, a stable program, not flashy, Michigan State light, which obviously makes sense with Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah.
I don't think Penn State fans want to hear they are Ohio State light, but that's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, Pat Narduzzi is a blue-collar guy. He believes in the run game. He believes in stopping the run. He did what he could to shut down Saquon Barkley and dare Penn State to throw. And they have finally got it figured out in the second half. Penn State is moving forward. I just really think that you wonder about this defense and how good it can be. And they can't sustain an injury to Barkley. The fact that Miles Sanders really hasn't done anything yet is a concern. I don't know that they really trust Mark Allen or Andre Robinson. So I think this Penn State team is going to be really fun to watch. But if anything happens to Saquon, it's going to be a lot different looking offense.
I was a little bit worried you go through a heartbreaking loss like that. How do you respond the next week?
Yeah.
But I think my concerns were answered in the postgame. The whole team was pretty resilient. They said they showed heart. And obviously, Trace McSorley is kind of the figurehead for that. What's your overall takeaways on him being the guy? I think it's easy to forget or look around the country. Other programs are struggling to find a quarterback. Even Alabama, LSU for years now. And here we are, Penn State. You go from Christian Ackerberg, say we don't want about him, to right away finding the next guy.
They have a quarterback that's a good fit for the offense they want to run. When I saw him play against Georgia in the bowl game, I had a feeling that even though maybe physically he isn't quite like Christian Hackenberg in terms of throwing a football through a brick wall, I think he's going to be a more effective college quarterback. I was glad to see he didn't run the ball as much this week. Those quarterback keepers are a little, I think, moving forward, that could get him hurt. But he can extend the play, and I just like the fact that he's such a competitive person. You can tell out there that he never gave up. And they made a lot of great plays in the pass game in the second half against a pretty good Pitt defense. That 4th and 16, I mean, that was fairly incredible how that came about. And I think people are complaining about the interception.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you.
Flip this around. No, I didn't, but do we come with chips or?
Barbecue.
I'll go with regular.
All right.
All right, here we go. So this
Service
is
with a smile.
Yeah, this is the Jackson Burger.
The interception, everyone asks about that. They just converted 4th and 16. Deshaun Hamilton just had dropped a touchdown pass. There's a lot of different ways it could have broken out.
Sure.
And I think a receiver kind of botched the play by running the wrong route. Chase probably shouldn't have thrown the ball, but I think that's the way Penn State's going to play. Thank you. They're aggressive. They're going to go for it. And I think if I was a fan, I'd rather root for a team that's not afraid to go for it than a team that plays not to lose. And that was a problem, I think, the last 2 years before this one.
You couldn't win it on a field goal anyway. You could tie it, send it to overtime. You're on the road. Why not go for it? It's a shot. It should have been batted down. It should have been out of the end zone. He should have thrown it to only where his receiver could get it. But yeah, I didn't think it was a big issue to me either. Now, after the game, you've been doing this a good deal longer than I have. Did you ever ask a bad question? I asked Trace a bad question, and he just stonewalled me.
What'd you ask him?
I said, how much sleep are you going to lose after that interception? A lot. You're right, Trace. That was a dumb question. I apologize. No, I kind of bounced back and recovered.
It's always the TV guys that just mess it up for the rest of us. So I'm not surprised you asked him that. No, I mean, I think that you were just referencing how much is he going to beat himself up.
Well, I recovered and I said, how much are you going to think about that when you go home? How much do you run through the game in your head? And I got the answer I wanted. Sometimes the bad, jerky questions provoke a good response from the guys that you end up using over and over again.
Yeah.
But I was just curious, how often that ever happens to you.
No, well, I mean, especially under Franklin, these guys are pretty coached up on how to handle the press. So I thought it was more interesting that Deshaun Hamilton met with the press for an extended period of time, and he is very honest and forthright about how much this loss is going to eat at him because he had that drop. And he had a really nice game. It wasn't the easiest catch, but if he makes it, we're probably talking about a Penn State victory. But I thought the way that he handled it was very classy.
I'm going to try this burger here. I can already see the grease coming out. Oh, there we go. So this is the Jackson burger.
It is.
Cooked medium, which is safe.
Yeah.
Solid. It's nice to go medium rare. But
are you going to grade it, or?
Am I going to grade it?
Yeah.
Us media people, we have to grade everything. Everything has to be an A, a B, a B+. I'm going to give it an A. Go ahead and give it an A.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So I expect you'll be back here soon.
So, on to Temple, which is an easy game to overlook, given that Michigan is following. Right. But it's also very not easy to overlook, given last year's result. A total poisonous way to open the season.
Right.
For James Franklin, for Christian Hackenberg, for the whole program.
Paris
Palmer's career at left tackle.
That was it. It was a one-game career after that.
And that was my first game working in Harrisburg, and that Saturday and Sunday, you just had to roast the program. How could you not? They hadn't lost to Temple in 74 years.
Yeah. Again, it looked like they thought they were going to win the game. They started out fast. They're up 10-0. And then Temple figured that if you blitz them or you just send somebody to Paris' side, they were getting there with 2 and 3 man rushes. So 10 sacks, the most sacks of any FBS team allowed all year last year.
Wow.
It was the lowest moment, I think, of James Franklin's career here at Penn State. But it's a new year. It's a different Temple team. This offensive line's a little bit better. And I think that Joe Moorhead will scheme around the deficiencies they have up front.
Yeah, they lose their leader, Tyler Medikevich. I believe he was either undrafted or a late round pick. He was working out with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Ioannidis, I believe, on the defensive line. Jahad Thomas, the running back, uncertain to play.
Dislocated thumb.
So they still have their quarterback, P.J. Walker. But, I mean, this is the team that lost to Army week 1.
Yeah.
So if they somehow were, I don't think at all they're going to come back and lose this game. We're gonna pick it in a little bit. Yeah, everything's fair.
They're kind of expected to win. You could make the argument that Penn State is in a no-lose situation this week because if they do lose,
oh my gosh,
this guy's going to fall in.
Yes, it is.
And if they do win, they're supposed to win. I just think if they clean up what they did wrong against Pittsburgh, it's a step in the right direction. And let's just not forget that it's important for them to win and win the game. But I have a funny feeling the next game is going to be the one that really speaks volume about where Penn State is headed this year. I mean, the Pitt game ended up being a toss-up. I think they will win the Temple game, but when they go to Michigan on the road, they start slow against Michigan. There's no recovering.
I watched them play this weekend. They are a steam engine. They will pummel you both sides of the ball. Harbaugh's got them like ball hawks on defense. They're big, strong, powerful, fast on offense. It could be ugly, but it's good to see that they're able to score some points. Now, in a lot of ways, you overlook the Temple game because the biggest storyline in it isn't the game itself. It's commemorating Joe Paterno for the first time since the scandal. Now, you covered the scandal. You've been covering this team for years. This is something we're going to be tackling for years. How do you handle Joe Paterno and his legacy? Your thoughts going in, is this as the first time that they're going to do it?
Well, I think technically it's a 50-year celebration of it. This would have been, it was 50 years ago this year that he coached his first game as a head coach at Penn State. And this is something that I think, obviously the family and a lot of his former players wanted. They wanted him to be, honored for that. I mean, when you talk about Joe, it's been 5 years. It is such a polarizing topic.
Sure.
It just there's no middle ground. Either you are you do not approve of the way he did things, with regard to the off-the-field incident with Sandusky and all that stuff, or you think he did what he needed to do. So Saturday they're gonna honor him. A lot of former players are gonna come back, and there's going to be a large portion of people that are happy about that. But there's also going to be a significantly large portion of people that are going to be very unhappy about the fact that Penn State's doing this. I think the national media has already weighed in. They'll continue to weigh in. I'm just curious to see how this thing comes off. How will the event go? How will it play out? I think the university is also taking a long look at how this is going to go. I mean, there's other things that can be done down the road, but I just think that if you're looking for certainty or clarity with regard to Joe Paterno and his legacy and the 50 years of the 50-year anniversary of no, not at all. Go ahead. No. So I would think that it's just going to be it's just polarizing. So
Sure.
We'll see how it goes.
I don't think there's a middle ground. It's complicated because, in a vacuum, you say there's a man who didn't do everything he could in his power to stop another man from sexually abusing children. You say that sentence out loud, you say, okay, without a doubt, that's morally, ethically wrong. I don't want anything to do with that person. But then on the other side, you find out that he did all kinds of good he basically built a town of State College, built a football program, so one of the winningest coaches in the history of football, helped kids for years, helped kids find themselves, find their careers, find their potential as a football player. How do you handle that? And I think as a Penn State fan, you didn't do anything wrong. You just built your identity around Penn State for all these years, and then by the actions of evil of one person, that's totally ripped away from you. Are you still not allowed to have those memories of being a Penn State football fan and watching Joe Paterno win games? So is there a right answer? I think it's easy to say, it's the right answer is you just don't honor him because he needed to do more. But it's just not that simple.
It's a very, very there's just a lot of layers to this thing, and like I said, there's only, it seems to me like after 5 years, there's only two ways to view this. It's you're either all the way in or you're all the way out when it comes to Joe.
Yeah.
And we'll see how 100,000 people react, and we'll see how things go outside the stadium on Saturday.
Let's pick the game.
Okay?
Temple.
Don't pick the same scores I'm going to pick.
I'll try not to. We haven't talked about this beforehand.
All right.
We don't do any free conversation. So what did you say, 9.5-point favorites?
Open at 8, it's up to 9.5.
Okay, I would have predicted around 10, so that seems about right. I like Penn State in this game. I like Penn State to cover in this game. I like them about 35-17. I think they're going to score some points. I don't see Temple being able to hang with the tempo this time. As long as the offensive line doesn't give up 10 sacks and they don't turn the ball over, 2-3 times in the first half, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see. I'm interested in the evolution of Penn State's offense and the development of Penn State's defense. I don't think if Jahad Thomas does play for Temple, he won't be the same Jahad Thomas that Penn State saw last year when he ran for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. If you're a running back and you have a thumb injury, it's going to compromise you. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of other things that Temple can do. So that's in Penn State's favor for sure. The one thing that I think is most interesting is I really think that Chris Godwin is one of the top wideouts in the Big Ten, and he has some catches this year, but he is not nearly as explosive as he was last season. He has 11 catches for 103 yards, and they ignored him a lot in the Pitt game plan. I saw there sometimes they weren't even looking his way. I look for them to go and try and establish him. He was a really good player at the end of last year, and if they can establish Godwin with the emergence of Tompkins, I think that will go a long way towards maybe opening up some room for Saquon, because it's like James Franklin said, they are absolutely loading the box to stop him, and he's had to have made some incredible plays just to get up the field. I mean, they've had him pinned in the backfield and he's gotten away. There's going to be some yards to be had in the passing game. So I think it's going to be 34-20 Penn State.
Okay.
And I look for Godwin to be more of a factor this week. And I think the Penn State defense better start tackling somebody soon, or they're going to get embarrassed in 2 weeks.
Well said. Let's eat. We're going to have a lot to chew on after this, especially after Michigan.